underway. Okay, fabulous. Once again, a very warm welcome to one and all to this afternoon's first session on strategic management. Really, the purpose of today is to give you the tools, the frameworks, the repertoire of skills almost that you require to understand strategy. And as I've said already, I'm looking at this from three specific horizons. Horizons 1 being the short-term future, Horizon 2 being medium-term, and Horizon 3 being the long-term outlook on strategic decision-making. So what will we really be doing? So as I've said already, examining a series of tools that help you unlock what we call strategic growth. And this isn't specific to any particular type of enterprise. These tools and frameworks mostly can be used for public or private enterprise. They can be used for organizations of different sizes. You can look at an SME, you could look at a large corporate, you could look at an international, multinational corporation. So the tools and frameworks, and by and large, can be used across different contexts. There are some that are more context specific. However, I will point these out as we go along. But generally speaking, the vast majority of the tools and frameworks we will discuss today can be used at different levels of organizational shape, size, and structure. So a couple of assumptions that I'm making with this course. Firstly, that you have an idea for what a business is and what a business does, okay? Perhaps you've thought about business plans. Now, again, you don't have to have your own business. I've also delivered this for practitioners. And with practitioners, the idea is that they have a business plan or they have an idea. But I want you as students to have an understanding of, what a business is. What does it mean to be in business? I want you to have at least a reasonable guess at what a business plan is. So something, that resembles a business plan document, something that captures how the business will operate. And finally, I want you to have an open mind to new ideas, because I'm going to be introducing you to a series of new frameworks, a series of new tools, analytical structures, analytical skills that you can then apply in order to think strategically, okay? So strategy in itself, there's no one way to do strategy. There are multiple methods, there are multiple tools, there are multiple approaches to strategizing. And as part of that, we might be re-examining what you may hold as the old norms or old truths. So what do I mean by that? Things that you perhaps have always done, things that you perhaps have always thought are the only way to do things. Well, I'm going to try and challenge that today, or challenge that over the course of the next 3 lectures. I want you to think of strategy as different by the end of these 3 modules, okay? For me, that's the biggest outcome I can give you. I can give you a new lens, I can give you a new perspective to look at strategy and to try and understand why and how it can be different, and why and how it is important for us as business students, okay? So firstly, I've talked about strategic growth as being significant. So we need to firstly discuss, well, why is growth important, okay? So why do we create strategies? Why do businesses have plans in place to be able to achieve, for example, 100% rise in sales, perhaps reduce their cost by 50%, perhaps looking at increasing their market share in China, or increasing their market share in Southeast Asia? Why do they have these strategies? Well, at the fundamental level, it's all about growth. Any business owner, any business manager, any CEO, any director, their fundamental purpose is to grow the enterprise, is to grow what the business can achieve. Now, if you're not trying to grow your business, then you're not going to survive. Why are you not going to survive? Because all of your competitors will be pursuing a growth strategy. You end up being squeezed out of your own market space. Now, you might be thinking, well, what if I'm doing a unique product? Yes, it might be unique today, but it won't be unique in 2 months' time, or 2 years' time, or 20 years' time. You'll always get squeezed out of your market at some point. So being unique today isn't a precursor for success. Being unique today gives you a short-term advantage, but that advantage can very quickly be eroded unless you're constantly looking at growing your business, improving what your business does, and looking at ways to grow your market share. Now, how can you grow your business, and what does that mean for you? Well, if you can grow your business, well, it will unlock new opportunities for you. It'll give you access to new markets. It'll give you access to different types of customers and clientele. Perhaps it will give you access to different resources, and the resources can be people, resources can be money, resources can be a lot of different things. So again, by pursuing growth, you can actually unlock new opportunities that perhaps once were not part of your business's repertoire. You can bring in more clients. Again, by pursuing a growth strategy, you can look at bringing in clients from different parts of the world, bringing in clients from different markets that perhaps originally you did not look to target. And finally, you can increase your profits. At the end of the day, the fundamental purpose of any business enterprise, this is private enterprise before anyone tries to correct me with profits, with non-profits and government enterprises, is that, you know, a private enterprise seeks to create a profit, okay? If you're a private corporation, you're an SME, or you're, you know, you're even a medium-sized enterprise listed on the alternative stock exchange, you want to create a profit, okay? If you're not making a profit, then it's not worth your time to be in business. It doesn't matter if you're a sole trader operating in one shop, or if you're a multinational enterprise operating across 15 different countries. The fundamental purpose for you running your business enterprise is to turn over a profit, okay? So profit is important here. Similarly, non-profit organizations, they still need to make money, okay? So even the likes of your charities or, you know, public sector companies, public sector bodies, yes, they don't want to make a profit because they're here to provide you with a service. They're here to meet an unsatisfied or unfulfilled needs. But similarly, they need to make money. The government wouldn't be giving you a public service if it wasn't able to fund that service, okay? So it needs to make money. Whether that money is made through the service or whether it's made through taxation, that's a different story. But the government needs money to provide that service. So at the end of the day, it's all about making sure that you can get money in to be able to continue operating. And that money that's coming in, except in a public sector context, usually needs to be greater than your costs. So if you're a private enterprise, you want to make sure that your costs at the very least are covered and you're making some extra money on top. You're making profit. You're giving yourself a reason to stay in business. So now that you talked about growth, what about strategy? Well, strategy can be a lot of different things, and to a lot of different people, it means something completely different. But the definition I go for, and I'll go into more detail in the next slide also, is strategy is all about making decisions about what actions your business intends to take in order to become more successful, okay? So strategy is a way to come up with plans. It's a way to come up with a blueprint. It's the way in which to give your people a sense of direction. It's a way in which you can set out what your business will look to achieve, your visions, your missions, your objectives. Strategy encompasses all of that, okay? It's all about making decisions about what actions your business intends to take in order for it to become more successful. Now, to do that, at the very, very least, some companies do this twice a year, some do it quarterly, but at least once a year, you want to have some rigid, structured, strategic planning process, okay? Something where your people are able to see what you're trying to achieve. The strategic planning process, it can be simply a strategy workshop or an away day. Now, if you're not familiar with what that is, essentially it's an opportunity for you to go spend time with your organization, understand what people want to achieve. Sorry, my internet connection cut out there. So yeah, it could be a strategy workshop where you go away for a day, spend time with your organization, you try to achieve certain goals, certain objectives. You come together to come up with new policies. You come together to come up with new ways of doing things. That can be a strategy workshop. Strategy can be simply senior leaders in your business, the CEO, the marketing director, the chief operating officer, the chief financial officer. That's very high level strategic decision making, looking at corporate strategy. Strategy can also be shop floor. It could be a retail manager having a couple of hours with the staff that work on the shop floor and thinking about what they're going to do differently next year, how they're going to make more sales next year, how they're going to reduce their wastage in that store. So strategy can be enacted at a lot of different levels. It can be at the unit level, it can be at the operational level, the departmental level, it can be at the corporate or functional level, or finally, it can also be at what we call network level. The network is a lot more complex. That is things like ecosystems. So for example, you have Apple, the mobile phone and electronic manufacturer. They have an ecosystem, okay? What do I mean by that? Well, they've got partners that they work with. They've got people that supply their parts, people that supply the apps, people that supply the technology that underpins Apple technology. So again, they have an ecosystem. They manage that ecosystem. So they're strategizing not only for themselves, but they're also strategizing for some of these other companies with whom they operate. Similarly with Microsoft, Microsoft have a big list of partners or suppliers who they work with, and they form part of Microsoft's ecosystem. Now, strategic planning itself is a formalized process, okay? So what do I mean by that? Well, it's got a structure. It runs in such a way that there are certain things that you need to do, certain things you need to be able to achieve, certain ways in which you need to work. It's a formalized process, okay? There are templates, there are models that we can use, and ideally you want to try and use them as a way in which you can structure your decision making. So why do we do strategic planning? Well, it's to analyze firstly our business's current situation. So before we even start thinking about the future, we need to understand, where are we today? What are we doing? What are we looking to achieve? What is specific about our situation today? It's about setting priorities for the future. So it's about saying, okay, here is where we are. Here is where we would like to be. Okay, what's our priority for the next 2 years, for the next 5 years, for the next 10 years? What's the objective? What do we want to achieve in that time span? Okay, where do we want to be in that many years' time? It's about focusing your resources to achieve your business's competitive advantage. That's quite important, okay? It's about saying, what do we have available to us? What is at our disposal? Now that can be cash, it can be money, it can be time. How much time do we have? What resources, i.e. human capital, technology, what do we have at our disposal? And how can we, as an organization, mobilize our resources so that we can achieve our competitive advantage, that we can achieve something different to what's already being done. So for many businesses, the reason they fail is because they don't understand the importance of strategic planning, okay? As I said already, it's not a one-off activity. It's not something you do once and then leave it for 10 or 15 years. You have to do it at the very least once every year. Some companies do it twice, some even 4 times a year, quarterly, because they understand that the market's changing. The world around you is constantly evolving. What the world is today at this time is very different to what the world will be tomorrow or the day after or next week, okay? So it's important that you have that understanding. So that is something that's important to a strategic planning process. It's about making sure that your business can thrive over that time period. And there are 5 key reasons why you should be strategic when pursuing a growth strategy. I'm going to cover those 5 with you now. Reason number 1, you want your business to be proactive rather than reactive. What do I mean by that? Well, you want to be in a position that you're keeping up with the trends in the market. You want to be in a position that you and your senior management team are able to identify what's going on in the market, and you're able to adapt. You're able to change your business, you're able to change your policies, change the ways in which you work so that your business practices reflect the needs of the market, okay? It gives you a chance to stay one step ahead of the competition, okay? Now, not everyone can be proactive. Small businesses tend to be quite reactive simply because they don't have the resources, okay? If you're a 2-person business, you know, husband and wife, realistically, between managing your business, managing your family affairs, managing everything else, you probably don't have time to do market research. But think of a large multinational corporation. Think of the likes of Tesla, think of the likes of Apple, Microsoft. These organizations spend millions, if not billions of pounds on research and development. Why do they do that? It's because they want to understand, well, what is going on in the market? What do customers want? What do customers desire? What's the future going to look like? And that's why they do that. They want to be proactive. They want to be able to come up with new products, new technologies, new items, new ways in which we as human beings live our lives, such that they're able to achieve advantage from it, okay? So about keeping up with those trends. Number two, it gives your business a sense of direction. Now, this is very, very important, and some people underestimate the importance of this, especially when you're a large organization. If you've got a corporate management team, you've got a CEO, you've got your chief executive officer, you've got your chief technology officer, your chief financial, chief marketing, so on and so forth. If they've got a certain strategy or they're trying to achieve something in a 5 or 10-year window, unless that strategy is communicated to the people working for you, to the people that are in the organization, whether it's senior management, middle management, lower management, and even the people on the shop floor, unless you're able to communicate that to your people, then it's pointless, because if they don't know what you're trying to achieve, how will they help you achieve that goal? So it's about breaking your strategy down and giving people a sense of direction in your organization. So what does it do? It defines the direction of travel and it helps establish goals. So again, your target might be to increase your market share in 5 different countries. Now that can't be done in 6 months or 1 year. That might take 4 or 5 years to increase your market share in 5 different countries. So you need to give your people goals. You need to give them things that they can achieve in a realistic time frame. Your target might be to move into Europe next year and focus on Spain and France, 2 countries in 1 year. You've got a certain target to achieve. Your people know what they're looking to do. Whereas if you said to them, we're going to expand into 5 countries in 5 years, then what's the performance objective? What is it? What's the goals that they should be achieving in the next 6 months, in the next 12 months, in the next 2 years? So it's about giving them a sense of direction, okay? Strategy also gives you what we call a foundation from which you can grow and evaluate your success. So basically, strategy is a way in which you create a blueprint. It gives you a foundation from which you can grow your business. It gives you a plan. It gives you a structure for how your business is going to behave, how your business is going to carry out its everyday activities. And also it gives you something to compare your performance to. If you've got a strategy in place, if you've got a strategy you're pursuing, well then when it comes to performance reviews every year, you can compare what people are doing to the strategy. You can say, how well does what person X, Y, and Z do compared to the strategy that we've set? So again, it's a way in which we evaluate the success of our business. We compare it to what we set out to achieve. Number 3, it increases efficiency. So it's all about thinking about what are our chosen functional activities and how do these align with our broader goals. So again, what are we doing? Are we doing something that's adding value? Or are we just wasting resources? Are we just spending time on things that aren't important to our business anymore? So again, technology is constantly changing. The way in which, for example, things were packaged in cartons or in bottles, how it was done 20 years ago is very, very different to how it's done today. Or take, for example, the motor vehicle industry. If you go back 30 years, 35 years, a lot of motor vehicle plants, so organizations such as Ford, organizations such as Nissan, etc., all these big car companies, it was very manual. It was manual labor. They had a production line. People stood on the production line, they assembled stuff, and it moved on. That's how it was structured. But nowadays, you've got robotics. Robots can do what a human being can do in a fraction of a time, okay? Robots can work on something at the same time. You've got robotic arms doing certain things, putting things on, taking things off. That's how the car manufacturing process is mainly done. The engine, the key parts of the car, they're put together by a robot, and then little bits at the end are done by hands, by human beings, okay? So thinking about efficiency, just because the way in which you did things in the past worked, doesn't mean they're still going to work today. If Ford or Toyota or BMW were to go back to the past, then they would be inefficient. They would be paying too much in wages. They would take too long to produce the cars, and customers wouldn't buy from them because they're not getting the cars fast enough. So again, it's about efficiency. How quickly can you do things? How efficient are you with using your resources? Strategy gives you a way in which you can guide how to use those resources. It gives you a way in which you can allocate your budget. It gives you a way in which you understand what objectives you want to achieve and how you're going to best achieve them. It increases your market share and profitability. So again, a strategy or strategies, when designed effectively or when implemented effectively, are ways in which you can unlock very valuable insights on both the market itself, on different target market segments. So again, as a business, you will have target markets, people that you want to sell to, people that you see as your end customers. So how can you best unlock insights into those segments? Well, strategy can help you. And also gives you an idea of service offerings. So again, as part of the strategy process, you will do your due diligence, you will do some research, you will try to understand what is going on in the external market, what is your competition doing, what are customers looking for, what is the latest technology, how can we use that information to help us decide what strategy we're going to pursue. It's an approach that is targeted to help translate our efforts into the best possible return on investment, okay? It's all about making sure that money that we're putting into developing our strategy helps us increase our profitability and market share in the long run. Finally, it makes your business more durable. A business can flourish in one year and struggle in the next. So again, just because your business is doing well today, as I've said already, doesn't mean that you can keep doing what you're doing next year. You need to change, you need to adapt, you need to keep up with what's going on in the external market. So again, as I said, if your business is doing well, some people fall into a trap, particularly small businesses, as I said, because they don't have the resources, they fall into a trap where they think, oh my God, we just had £100,000 in sales this year. It's been a fantastic year. Let's do this again. Okay, you might make some sales, but realistically, you're not going to be able to repeat what you did. Why? Because the market will change. People's tastes will evolve. People's needs will evolve. Other competitors will enter the market. Some companies will start selling the product for cheaper than you. Some companies will design a better product. How can you compete with them? It's about making sure that you stay durable. And to stay durable, you need to adapt. You need to be able to change what you're doing. Businesses that lack a strong foundation will tend to have trouble riding the waves. So again, what is a foundation? A foundation is a strategic base, something for us to go on. We have a foundation, we have a blueprint, we have a structure that's been designed through our strategy. That gives us something to build on. If you go in without a plan, if you go in without any structure, without a blueprint, then you're going to struggle because you don't have a basis to go from. You don't have something to compare your performance to. You've got no way to tell if what you're doing is correct, if what you're doing will equal success in 1, 2, 5, or 10 years' time. And finally, this is just a short statistical fact. The odds of survival are always in favor of businesses that have some form of strong strategic planning, okay? Why? Because you're always better to prepare. Any business that prepares, which is what strategic planning basically is, it's a way of preparing for the future, gives you a chance of surviving. It's not a guarantee that you will survive. Some businesses, even with good plans, can fail. For example, in the COVID pandemic, a lot of businesses that were previously performing very well, all of a sudden came to a grinding halt. Now, obviously, you could argue that the pandemic is a one-off, it's a freak act of nature. But at the end of the day, no matter how good your strategy is, you can sometimes fail. But the point I'm trying to make is, compared to someone that doesn't have any strategy, you have a better chance of surviving, okay? The odds of survival are always greater for the firm that has some form of strategic planning or some form of strategic decision-making in place. A definition for strategy, now this is an academic definition taken from Johnson and Scholes' textbook. I do recommend this if anyone's looking for any readings. Jerry Johnson and Paul Scholes, Paul Scholes, a footballer. Jerry Johnson, and I think it's Martin Scholes, 2004, they came up with this definition for strategy. And I think it's quite a holistic definition because it captures a lot of what we spoke about already. Strategy is the direction and the scope of an organization over the long term, which achieves advantage for the organization through its configuration of resources within a changing environment in order to fulfill stakeholder expectations. So that's quite a loaded definition, okay? Loaded, why? Because it's got a few different parts, and let's break it down. So firstly, it's a direction and the scope. So again, we talked about how strategy is a foundation, it's a blueprint, it gives you a sense of direction. So that's the first part. Secondly, it's over the long term. So again, whilst yes, you can have short-term strategies, the whole purpose of strategic decision-making is to think about the long term. What do you want to achieve in 5, 10, 15, 20 years' time? And how is it done? It's done through the configuration of resources. So it's about configuring your land, your labor, your capital, your enterprise within what we call a changing environment. So again, as I've said already, the world, what it is today is very different to what it will be tomorrow. And it's down to us to make sure we can fulfill the stakeholder expectations. Our stakeholders being shareholders, being customers, being suppliers, being the employees, local community. All of these people are affected by our business. All of these people need us to provide our services in a certain way, in a certain manner. So we as a business are responsible for delivering on that. Components of strategic management. This is a good framework to just consider in terms of how strategic analysis or strategic management is conducted, okay? So there's 3 key parts to it. There's the strategic analysis part. So I'll explain these in more detail as we get into the specific models, but for strategic analysis, it's all about understanding the external environment of the firm, the internal environment of the firm, and the stakeholders that are impacted by what the firm does, okay? So it's what is the firm's strategic position? How are we based? How are we performing compared to our competition? How are we doing from an internal standpoint? Do we have the resources we need? Do we have the people? Do we have the technology? Do we have the land, the labor? What about our stakeholders? What do they think about us? Who are our stakeholders? How important are they to what we do? These are all good things that we need to be aware of. So that's all part of what we call the strategic analysis. We then have strategic choices. So another part of strategic management is thinking about, well, what are the choices? We need to understand the underlying base that guides future strategy. What are the options that we need to consider for evaluation and selection? And finally, strategy implementation. It's about translating our strategy into action. It's about taking firm structures and designs. It's about resource planning. It's about strategic change management. It's about the actual implementation part. How do we achieve the success? What do we do? This is another model that can be good at looking at different stages in strategic planning. So first of all, we've got what we call a business mission, okay? It's what the high level business approach is. We recognize what is our business here to do. So if and when you join an organization, you will see that they've got a specific purpose, a specific mission, a specific reason as to why they operate, okay? What they're here to do, what does that business want to achieve, okay? So that's called the business's mission. It's here to provide a certain service in a certain way. But in order for you to think about the future strategy, it's about saying, okay, where are we today? What is our mission? What are we here to do? How did we get here? What was important about the last 5 years, the last 10 years that got us to where we are today? And if you're not in a place you want to be, then why are you not there? What could you do differently? How do you need to change to make sure the next 10 years you can achieve success? So it's all about recognizing what you've done in the past, okay? That's the first stage. It's then about doing what we call internal and external analysis. We look outside our business, we look inside our business, we try to identify our strengths, our weaknesses, our opportunities and threats. And I'll cover the SWOT framework with you shortly. But it's all about understanding what's going on both internally and externally to our business. We carry out our SWOT and PESTEL. So SWOT I've talked about already, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities and threats. We also have PESTEL, political, environmental, societal, technological, economic, and legislative measures. These are things that affect our external environment, things that we don't have control over. We can't control politics. We can't control society. We can't control the economy. We can't control the environment. These are all things that happen to us. They happen to the environment. They happen to the business market space in which we operate. How do we react? How do we best overcome these challenges? That's all part of strategic planning. Once we've done that, we then reevaluate our mission. Is our current business mission still reflective of what we're looking to achieve? Does it still reflect the needs of our customers? Does it still reflect where our business is going? We then identify our strategic options. So we then say, okay, here's what we need to do then. Here's some of the things that we need to be pursuing
in order to deliver on what our customers want. We then have what we call operational objectives. Now, these are the point at which you start turning your strategy into tangible goals, tangible objectives, tangible to-do things. So these are your operational objectives. These are things that your business will look to do now to achieve that strategy. You come up with what's called tactical plans. Tactical plans will be used by middle management, perhaps even lower management, to be able to identify what their role is, what's the role of their functions, what's the role of their teams, what's the role of their departments in delivering the success. How can the marketing team, the sales team, the operations team, the procurement team, the marketing team all come together? What is their roles? What do they have to do in their respective areas in order to deliver the high level strategy? Okay, so those are what are called tactical plans. They'll be done at the independent functional level, the independent departmental level. And then finally, control. Why is control important? Because you want to make sure that you're monitoring how well the business is performing against the strategy. You want to make sure that you're not just leaving it for 5 years' time. If you set a strategy today to achieve growth of hitting 10 new markets in 5 years, then you need to continuously check up on that progress. How are you doing after 6 months? How are you doing after 1 year? How are you doing after 2 years? So on and so forth. If you just wait until the end of the 5th year, then you don't know. You're not monitoring it. You're not actually observing how your business is performing. Instead, you're just waiting till the end, and that's not going to help. Okay, you need to be in a position where you're constantly monitoring, evaluating the performance of your business, and understanding what your business is achieving or potentially not achieving, as the course may be. Horizon plan. So this is only start talking about what I mentioned at the start of the call. There's 3 horizons, horizons 1, 2, and 3. And as part of that, we need to consider what's called a horizon plan. So horizon plan is a good starting point when talking about or having a discussion about strategic growth. Why? Because in itself, it's a framework. It's almost like a coat hanger for all of the other strategic tools that I'm going to introduce to you. The framework envisions what we call 3 horizons. And these 3 horizons will provide you with a structure for businesses to assess opportunities for growth. It will give you a way in which you can continue strategizing without neglecting the present performance of your company. And what does it look like? Well, it looks something like this. So here we have a diagram with 2 axes. On the left-hand axis, or what we shall call the y-axis, we have the value. And on the x-axis, we have time, okay? So time of value is what we're looking at. Now, horizons 1, 2, and 3, they both deal with value and time, but 3 of them are different. Why? Because horizon 1 is all about short time, okay? So for time, it's quite low, but similarly for value, it's quite low, because if you want to do something that adds real value to your business, realistically, it's not something you can achieve within a 6-month window or a 1 month or a 1 year window. It's probably going to take you more time to make something that's going to revolutionize your business. So horizon 1 is very much focusing on your core business. What are we doing today? How can we make it more efficient? Examples being maybe reducing wastage, maybe looking at ways in which we can boost our market share in a particular demographic. So it's all about what we do today, how can we improve what we're doing today? So that's horizon 1, that's short term, okay? That can be anything from 6 months to maybe even 2, 3 years. Very much core business focus. What we're going to do today, how is it going to improve our performance in our markets? Short term focus. Horizon 2 is more medium term. Now that can be up to about 5 years, 6 years. So again, it's looking at where do we want to get to in 5 or 6 years' time. It's what we call the emerging business. How will our business look in 5 or 6 years' time? What's changing? What new technologies are coming out? What consumer needs are changing and evolving? How can we change our product offering to meet those consumer needs? So it's about how our business will change in 5 years' time. It's what our business will emerge as. So that's why we call it as emerging business. It's the medium term. It's about how we envisage our business being in 5, 6 years' time. And then finally, we have Horizon 3. Now, Horizon 3 is very much longer term. We're looking here about 10-year strategy. We're looking here, very much looking into the future. something that perhaps the CEO might not even be around to see because he or she might not actually survive 10 years in the job. But Horizon 3 is very much future looking, okay? It's forward looking. It's about what the goals and objectives we want to achieve without considering the future implications of the business. So what do I mean by that? Well, it's about how do you change your business? How do you become what the customers need you to become? How do you become something new, something that isn't already in existence? For example, Apple are a very good example of a revolutionary company. I'll explain to you why. So with Apple, when they introduced the iPod, they revolutionized music. Okay, that was firstly what they did. They went from being simply a laptop manufacturer and a desktop manufacturer, you know, MacBooks, iMacs. These are all devices that Apple produced in the past as well. But then they recognized that they can do more. They went into the music business. They came up with the iPod. But on top of that, they came up with the iTunes library. Now, the iTunes library was revolutionary. It changed how music was streamed. It changed how people listened to music. It changed how music was sold to the general public, okay? iTunes revolutionized the music industry. No longer did you need to buy cassettes, CDs. You can now stream music on the internet. And iTunes was a platform that hosted all the music that you would want. Secondly, the iPhone. Now again, Apple entered the phone market. They came after Nokia, they came after Samsung, they came after Sony. All these other brands were already in the mobile phone market, Motorola, etc., etc. All these brands already existed. Apple were late in arriving, but Apple have grown to become the biggest. Why? Because they recognized that smartphones were the future. Using the iPod design, they came up with the iPhone, and the iPhone revolutionized what people were looking for. The iPhone changed how people view society as a whole. Okay, so iPhone made the mobile phone market completely different, and that's where Apple created what we call a new business opportunity. Okay, they went from simply doing laptops and desktop computers to having an iTunes platform for streaming music, to having their iPhone range, and who knows what the future holds. I mean, at the moment, I believe they're actually experimenting and creating electrical cars. So you could be driving an Apple car in 10 years' time. Who knows? They're working on Horizon 3 already. They're working on something new. They're working on something that will change their product line, something that will completely revolutionize what they do. And that's all about Horizon 3, okay? That strategic planning for the future. It's about thinking into the future, understanding what customers might want, and how you as a business can perhaps achieve or deliver on that need. So again, I've talked about this already, so I'm not going to spend too much detail, but very much with Horizon 1, it's about protecting your core business. Why? Because your core business, i.e. what you're doing today, is where you're getting most of your profits, okay? If Apple were to start focusing on electric cars, then it's going to take them time to get there, and there's no guarantee that people will start buying them straight away, so they might not even make any money for 2 or 3 years. So it's not worth their time to focus on electric cars in Horizon 1. In Horizon 1, they're focusing on the mobile phones, they're focusing on the laptops and their desktops, they're focusing on their iTunes platform. They don't want to focus on something that is future looking. They want to focus on their core business. Why do they want to do that? Because that's what's generating their profits today. That's what's providing them with their cash flow. And that is where their focus is on improving their performance. Why? Because they want to do what they already do in an efficient way. They want to improve their efficiency. They want to reduce their costs. They want to shrink their wastage, and they want to be able to make more profit from what they're doing. Okay. They want to maximize whatever value they can. That's Horizon 1. Horizon 2 is what we call unlock the emerging business opportunity. So again, it's about looking into the medium term and saying, okay, we've looked after Horizon 1. We know how we're going to maximize our profits from our core business. How do we perhaps unlock new opportunities? Now, that can be things that are likely to generate you substantial profits in the future, but could require considerable investment. So, for example, a lot of companies are currently looking at augmented reality and virtual reality. Again, it's been something that's been in the making for a few years, but now it's starting to become more commercialized. There's more people accessible now that nowadays that technology is more accessible to people. So now companies are looking at ways in which they can make money from things such as virtual reality, such as augmented reality. So that, for example, may be the medium-term future objective for companies like Microsoft, companies like Apple. Okay, it's about looking into the future, but the immediate future, not the long-term future. It's about looking into that 3 to 5 year window or 3 to 6 year window and saying, okay, we've got the iPhones, we've got the laptops, they're making us money today, but what could make us money in 3 or 4 years' time? What would customers want? And identifying those opportunities and unlocking the business opportunity that exists as part of that. And then finally, Horizon 3, which we spoke about at a good length already, is all about coming up with new ideas for growth, new ideas that may generate us extra value in the future. Examples of that can include things such as research projects, pilots, minority stakes in new businesses. These are all things that are being done, okay? These large corporations, likes of Google, Microsoft, Apple, Facebook, these companies are investing millions of dollars and pounds in new research projects. They're happy to buy a stake in new and emerging businesses. I think Apple at the moment are currently buying up to 20 new businesses every single year. Why are they doing that? Because they're identifying the potential. They're identifying that new startups have come up with new ideas. They've got new technologies, cutting edge ideas, and they're investing in them so that if and when that business becomes successful, they will be able to benefit from it. Okay. They'll either be able to turn it into their own business if they buy it outright, or they'll have a stake, a 50% share, a 40% share, whatever it may be. Next up, we're going to be looking at strategic tools, okay? So what we talked about already is called the Horizon Plan. It's a framework that allows us to peg or hang the rest of our discussion on, okay? So a starting point, the horizons give us something to go on, a foundation, okay? So bear the horizons in mind. Next up, we're going to be looking at the strategy tools, the tools that you can use to analyze what's going on in the internal environment, the external environment, that looks at your stakeholders, that looks at what your business could look to achieve in the future, what are the tools and frameworks you can use. So to do that, we're going to have two different types. We're going to have what we call the very focused or the micro ones. These can help with short-term planning. Now, these can be used with both long and short-term strategic planning. So Horizon 1, Horizon 2, Horizon 3, but the outcome will be very, very different depending on what horizon you're looking at. If you're looking at Horizon 1, the outcome will be very immediate. It'll be very much about what can we do today, tomorrow, next week. If you're looking at Horizon 2, it might be about what can we do in a year or two's time, what can we do to change how we source certain things or how we perhaps adopt certain technologies. It's all about future orientation. And finally, Horizon 3 is all about the longer term future, okay? So how do we want to be perceived in the future? What kind of a business do we want to become? What kind of a business do we want to be known as? And then finally, we'll have what we call very broad or macro strategic tools. These tend to be focused on a long term. Why? Because they're very high level, okay? It's macro level decision making. It's looking predominantly at the big, high level, the important or the complex areas that can't easily be broken down. It's all about future thinking. It's all about what does the future look like. It's quite fuzzy. It can be quite confusing. There's no great deal of certainty with this. It's all very uncertain. Okay, so it's very broad, it's very macro level. And what it will do is it'll help you with what we call a longer term focus. So before we do that, I'm going to talk about the business model canvas, which is a tool that you can use throughout. But I think it's quite lengthy, this next section. So let's take a quick break. I make it 5:57 on my watch. So if we take a 10-minute break, let's all aim to be back by 6:03 p.m. Okay, so 10-minute break, and let's aim to be back so that we can get underway. Okay, thank you. So yes, let's get back underway this afternoon. So as we were talking before the break, we looked at the purpose of strategizing. Why do we make strategy? What's the importance of it? We looked at the three horizons 1, 2, and 3, short, medium, and long-term future. And we discussed, why different strategies are used at different times and how they might be important. And again, I gave you the example of Apple, Microsoft, Google, etc., just to kind of bring to life how perhaps that strategy making might be done in real life. Now, of course, I don't know the ins and outs of Apple strategy or Google strategy. It's difficult. This is things that usually keep quite quiet. They wouldn't share that with anyone. So this is just me guessing. That's not to say that Apple will or won't do what I just said. But the point I'm trying to make is strategy is quite private. It's done in-house. You only ever find out about it once the business has either achieved the strategy or it's close to achieving it, when it becomes evident or it becomes apparent a certain strategy is being followed. Okay, so strategy is quite private. It's quite it's kept under wraps. It usually starts off being very, very secretive at a high level, and then it starts getting shared with people in the business. It starts to grow and it starts to become obvious to the external world after a good few months, if not a few years, of the strategy being implemented. Okay. So the second part of today's session, we're going to start looking at some of the tools. And one of the most famous ones, or one of the ones that's used almost synonymously with any business anywhere in the world, is what we call the Business Model Canvas, or the BMC. And this was developed by Alexander Osterwalder and Yves Pinier. Now, they came up with the BMC model as a template for describing what they call the key elements that make up your business model. So those key elements, or the 9 key elements that they identified, for them are the fundamentals that go into producing your business. Why are they important? Well, for Osterwalder and Pinier, they help you describe the model that your business is adopting. They help you describe the business, what the business will look to achieve. In turn, it allows you to adjust your model to one that's better suited to achieving your horizon aspirations. What does that mean? Well, it allows you to adjust your model so that you can then achieve the longer term aspirations that your business wants to achieve, whether it's horizon 1, whether it's horizon 2, or it's horizon 3. Why? Because we will, as you will see in a few minutes' time, the 9 different elements don't all have to be changed at the same time. Certain things changing can give you an outcome in horizon 1, or an outcome in horizon 2, or an outcome in horizon 3. So the 9 key elements are almost like the jigsaw pieces that need to be changed, that need to grow, that need to shrink, depending on what you're looking to achieve. What you need to be able to do is discuss each element, decide how that element is important to you as in your business. So if you're a strategic practitioner, if you're a strategy manager, why are these elements important? You need to be able to draw together your business model canvas. It's not just about talking about it, but bringing it to life, and I'll show you the template for how you would do that. And finally, you would identify the best strategic tool that can be used to change your business model, okay? And in turn, unlock your horizon aspirations. So that's something that you would look to do in parallel with using the business model canvas, okay? So business model canvas, you wouldn't use standalone. We probably use that with some of the other tools and frameworks that we will talk about over the coming sessions. So at the high level, here is a template. This is what it looks like. You have 9 key elements. You've got the key partners, key activities, key resources. You have cost structure. You have customer relationships, customer segments. You've got channels to market, and you have the revenue streams. That's 8. And the 9th one is the middle one, which is what we call the value proposition. And the value proposition is basically what value does your business add to your customer. So almost, oh, sorry, I've skipped a slide. Almost it brings together all of the other 8 elements and it says what value do we create as a business through each of these elements being fulfilled, okay? So that's your value proposition. That's something that's unique to your business. What value does your business provide to the end customer that may or may not be provided anywhere else, okay? So the value proposition is quite a significant component part of what your business does or seeks to do. So let's break those 9 key elements down further. Well, firstly, you have the key partners. So who are key partners and why are they important? Well, key partners are people that our business relies on, okay? These are the people that either provide us with raw materials or they provide us with certain goods and services that are needed to run our product. I'll give you an example. If you're a car manufacturer, in order for you to get your car on the road, it needs tires. Tires are usually supplied by an external company, okay? Toyota or Ford or BMW or Volkswagen, they don't produce their own tires. They will use someone like Pirelli, they will use someone like Michelin, they will use some of the external brands that produce tires, and they will buy them or they will get them sent in so they can be put onto their cars. Now, obviously, if you are a car manufacturer, the tire supplier or the people that make the tires are quite important. Why? Because if you don't have tires, then you can't get the car on the road. So for Toyota or for BMW or for Ford, tire manufacturers or tire suppliers become key partners, okay? Without their partnership, without them supplying tires, you would never be able to get the car on the road. So that's just one example. Each business has its own key suppliers or key partners. Now, those relationships between you and your key partners may well be exclusive or uncontracted, i.e., they're just between you and them. You've got a contract that governs what they must provide and how much you must pay, and that tends to be kept quite secretive or quite private, or it could be more open. So in things like ecosystems, you tend to find that it's quite transparent what contract people are on. Why? Because you've got multiple key partners and you want to be quite competitive. And one of the best ways to be competitive is to make it clear, is to make it obvious what the terms of your contract, what's going on here. It gives the people a chance to compete against one another to offer better terms. So sometimes you'll get what's called open contracts, but most of the time it tends to be private exclusive agreements between you and your key partners. It's important for you to be clear on what your business gains from your key partner that you could not do alone, okay? So again, going back to the example of the car and the tire manufacturers, what does the car manufacturer gain? Well, it gains the opportunity to put the car on the road. Without the tires, the car's worthless. No one's going to pay you money for a car that doesn't have tires because they can't drive it. So again, what does your business gain from that partner? Is the possibility to complete the car manufacturing process. Without the tires going on the car cannot be driven, therefore it becomes worthless, okay? So what does your business gain from that key partner that you can't do alone? Ford, Toyota, BMW don't currently have the facility to make their own tires. Maybe they might want to one day in the future, who knows? But perhaps it's just cheaper to buy it from someone else. Buy it from Pirelli, buy it from Michelin, buy it from Ducati or all of these other brands that produce tires. Key activities, that's the second key element. So what are the key activities that your business must perform in order to deliver your value proposition to clients? So again, we spoke about value proposition being, what value do we add as a business? Well, what is the value proposition? How does that affect our key activities? What must we do as a business? What key activities must we deliver in order to fulfill that value proposition? Now, these can include all of your activities in the value chain, such as service development, such as service delivery, marketing, post-service support. These are all things, these are all functional areas that your business needs to survive, okay? You need your sales team, you need your team that logistics and delivery, procurement, these are all key activities, okay? So for example, if you are a retailer, then you're going to need your sales team to sell the goods and services. You're going to need your warehouse and logistics team to deliver the products from the warehouse to the customer.
You're going to need your after sales staff or your customer care department to be able to liaise with any problems, etc. These are all the key activities that need to happen in order for your business to deliver the product. So we also call this the value chain, okay? These key activities form part of your core value. They make up the value chain. We then have key resources. Now, key resources are basically those that your business need in order to deliver its value proposition. So what is the land, the labor, the skills, the technology, the physical assets, the intellectual property, perhaps the patents and copyrights, any data, any brands, any financial resources? What are all the things that your business needs to be able to fulfill its value proposition? So that's what your key resource, that's just an example of some of key resources. There may well be many more that are important, okay? So how does the combination of these things come together in order for you to deliver a value proposition to your customer? Now finally, fourthly, I should say, we have the value proposition in itself. So as I've said already, the value proposition basically is what value your business offers its customers. Now it can describe which problems you are solving using your service. So again, buying from you, what customer pain points will be resolved? What customer pain points does your product or service seek to fulfill? Or what customers' needs are satisfied by consuming your services? That's a good way to think about customer value proposition, okay? What needs are you fulfilling in the customer? How will the customer's problems be solved using your products? That is your value proposition. Now, what we call a competitive value proposition is something which is usually new or unique in the market. What can that be? Well, that can be something that perhaps performs better than your competition. Maybe you've come up with a brand new mobile phone that can do more than any other mobile phone can. Perhaps you come up with a new car that runs completely on electricity and can match the performance of traditional petrol cars. Again, it could be anything at all, as long as it's either new and unique, or it performs better, or is more flexible perhaps. So again, maybe your car or your mobile phone or your product or service can be done in a different way. It can be delivered for cheaper. It can be delivered in such a way that it's a better offering. Maybe it's better designed than your competition, or maybe it's just better than what's already on the market. So again, it's about coming up with something that makes you stand out, that makes you unique with your product offering or with your service offering to your customer. We then have customer relationships. So what kind of relationships will your business have with your customers? That's important, because relationships can offer high levels of what we call personnel service, or what we call self-service to a degree. So again, what do you mean by self-service? Self-service usually is when you go into a supermarket, you pick up what you want on the shelves. Rather than going to the tills, you go straight to the self-checkout machines, you scan your products, you pay for your goods, you walk out. You don't even have to speak to anyone anymore when you go to the grocery store. That's an example of what we call self-service. But other goods and services, they're more what we call personal. So for example, when you're looking to maybe buy a new house, you don't just want to look at it online, make a bid online and pay for it online without talking to anyone, without seeing it, without perhaps doing a site survey. So again, depending on the product you're buying, depending on the service you're buying, you might actually want to have a more of a personal service. You want to go have a viewing, you want to talk to an estate agent, you want to talk to perhaps a surveyor, someone that can give you advice on the property, someone that can tell you what's good and bad, etc., etc. So depending on the type of product you're offering, your customer relationships are quite important, whether or not you can offer a self-service or a more personalized relationship is quite important. Sometimes it can be quite transactional. So where that usually occurs is, again, sticking with retail, the relationship you have with a retailer when you go to shop is simply to buy a good or service. When I go to Tesco or I go to Asda or Walmart, I go in there, I pick up the goods from the shelf, I pay for them, that's it. That's the only real relationship I have with the retailer. It's very transactional. I'm there to buy goods and services. They're there to take my money. That's it. It's a completely transactional relationship. However,
In other cases, we can have what's called a longer term relationship. So that tends to be, for example, in a supplier relationship. So again, you might have a supplier that's supplying you with parts, goods, components. Again, you might need them continuously. You might need them every few weeks, every few days, every few months. So again, it's an ongoing relationship. It's not a one-off purchase. It's a continuing purchase. It's something that you both need in order to be able to do your business. You could be the supplier to someone else. So again, that relationship is different. How do you treat your customer? How do you make sure that you win repeat business from them? So again, these are different types of relationships to a simply transactional one, which tends to be one-off or off the cuff. It's not really something where you have a relationship going. And finally, customer relationships can span from the pre-service stage through the service and into the post-service stage, and can include things such as cross-selling and upselling. So again, it could be that the relationship starts when the customer first asks a question about the product. He or she maybe doesn't know what the product does, doesn't know how the product works, want you to give a demonstration, they want you to explain the benefits, they want you to take them through how the product can be used. They then want you to perhaps help set it up. They probably maybe want you to help explain the benefits in terms of how you can now use the product to maximize your utility. And then maybe post-service, perhaps it breaks down, perhaps there's an issue with the product, or you have troubleshooting problems. Again, you might go back to a retailer, you might ask them for support, they might have customer service, they might have a customer after sales support team. So again, the relationship can start from before purchase, run through the purchase process, and continue even after the purchase, going into after sales. Okay, so a customer relationship doesn't just start and end when the transaction is made. It can be pre-transaction, it can be during the transaction, and it can continue after the transaction as well. We also have what we call channels to market. Basically, these are channels that our business will use in order to deliver its services to the customer. So that's stuff like your infrastructure, your logistics, how aware you are of what offerings you can give, what pre-service experience you can give, what post-service. Again, do you offer installation services? Do you offer a warranty? Do you offer customer care on a product? Do you offer follow-up support? Again, these are all things that are channels by which we can reach our customer. How we deliver to the customer is also a channel. Do you deliver to the customer's home? Do you deliver to local convenience store a customer can collect? Do you offer a click and collect facility where the customer can come into the store and pick up the goods and services? So on and so forth. Okay, these are all channels. These are all ways in which we reach our customer, ways in which we deliver the product, whether it's physical or the product, whether it's a service, to our consumer. Customer segments. The customer segments are basically those areas that our business will look to serve. What are those customer segments? What are those client markets, target markets that we will look to serve? And who are those that you won't serve? Who do you not want to pursue? So I'll give you an example. If you're a business that's producing mobility scooters for older people, people that maybe have problems walking long distances, but maybe people that can't stand for too long. So again, you're offering what we call mobility scooters, or ways in which people can travel when they get to old age. Realistically, you're not going to target those products at young, fit, able-bodied teenagers, young, fit, able-bodied men and women of working age, because they are not going to need the product. What are they going to do with a mobility scooter if they're fit and healthy and they can walk? Okay, so customer segments are important. You need to identify who you want to serve and who you don't want to serve. Cost structures. What is the cost structure of our business? And the cost can be fixed or variable. So we might have costs that we just have to pay because we're renting a premises. So for example, you might have a big warehouse and you're paying rent for that warehouse. Now, the landlord doesn't care whether or not you're making any goods and services. For a landlord, you've got a lease, you've got a contract, you owe the landlord the rent. That's a fixed cost. Regardless of whether you're making zero profit or £1 million profit, you still have to pay rent no matter what, okay? Rent is fixed, it doesn't change. You have to pay it during the course of your lease. That's an example of a fixed cost. Other costs can be variable. That tends to be things such as bulk buy discount. So for example, if you buy one phone, you have to pay full price. If you buy 10 phones, you can maybe get 5% off. If you buy 100 phones, maybe they'll give you 15% off. If you buy 1,000 phones, they might give you 30% off, 40% off. So again, costs are variable. So depending on what your business is doing, that tends to be the case with suppliers. If you're a car manufacturer and you're looking to buy tires for your cars, if you're only going to buy four tires for one car, then chances are the supplier is going to charge you full price. But if you're going to buy 400 tires for 100 cars, then they'll probably give you a discount. Or if you're going to buy 40,000 tires for 10,000 cars, then you'll probably get an even bigger discount, okay? So the cost is variable. It can go up or down depending on the quantity you're buying. Typically, they require what we call less upfront investment and allow us to scale up more easily, whilst those that have higher fixed costs tend to demonstrate or benefit, we should say, from scale. So what does that mean? Well, if you've got variable costs, then you can scale up gradually. As your business grows, you buy more. As your business gets bigger, you take on more contracts. Whereas if you go fixed costs, yes, a high cost to begin with, but you can experience what we call economies of scale. That's basically where no matter how much you grow, you're still paying the fixed price. You're not actually paying any more as your business grows. So again, things to consider when it comes to cost structure. Finally, we have what's called the revenue structure. The revenue structure is how much our customers are really willing to pay. How much are they happy to pay us for our goods and services? And the revenue can be in the form of what we call a one-off fee, i.e. something that's bought today, one-off purchase. If I was to sell my mobile phone to someone, that's a one-off purchase. I only have one phone. I've sold it to someone, that's it, done. There's no more fees. However, some businesses have what they call a recurring or an interim fee. So basically, you might have a subscription model, okay? Don't know if anyone on the phone's got maybe Netflix. So again, Netflix is a subscription model. You pay a fixed fee every month and you're able to use the service. Similarly, your mobile phone contract provider, whether you're with Vodafone or if you're with 3 or EE or all these different mobile phone providers, you pay them a fixed monthly fee, and they in return they provide you with your data, they provide you with your texts and your phone calls. You're paying a fixed amount, and in return you're getting a service. Similar to cost, prices can also be fixed, variable, or differential. So fixed and variable we've talked about already. Differential pricing is where perhaps we look at who we charge how much to. What does that mean? Well, think of it this way. I've been on a contract with the 3 mobile phone manufacturer for almost 10 years. Now, I've been a long-term customer. So when it comes up to my renewal window and I'm looking to renew my contract, I tend to say to them, well, okay, that's the best price you can give me, but that's also the same price you're giving everyone else. I've been your customer for 10 years. I've used your products and services, and usually they'll give me a small discount on top. So that's called differential pricing, okay? They're differentiating between me and someone who's a brand new customer. If you're a brand new customer joining 3, you would have probably end up paying the full price that they're looking for you to pay. Whereas because I've been a long-term customer, I am perhaps able to get a small discount and get some money off. So that's called differential pricing. So for the exact same product, the exact same service, we pay a different price. So that's differential pricing. Finally, we have what's called discounting. Now, discounting is used to encourage specific customer behavior. So again, some companies will say buy 2 and save 5%. Some of them will say buy 3, get 1 free. Again, that's discounting, okay? It's a way in which you're encouraging people to buy more of your products in return for giving them something back. So why should the customer buy 3 or more? Because they're going to get something from you, okay? They're going to get a free product, they're going to get a discount, they're going to get money off. So you make it worth their while, you give them an incentive. And that's also a way in which you can make more revenue. Some tips about carrying out the BMZ. So if anyone's going to use the business model canvas for their assignment for this class, a couple of things I would suggest. It's sometimes quite nice just to draw it out. Now, obviously, if you're doing it for the assignment, keep an electronic copy, don't print it off. Everything at the moment is electronic because of COVID, so you'll have to submit it electronically. So don't print it out, just download it, edit it on your desktop or your laptop screen. Discuss each of the headings. So again, talk to your peers, use your peer support network. If you're using BMC and so is someone else in the module, talk to one another. How have they interpreted something? How have you interpreted it? What can you help each other with? What can perhaps someone else remember about the class that you don't remember? So again, talk to one another, use each other as a support network. A couple of things to remember, the varying size blocks. So again, if you recall, not all of the squares were the same size. Why? Because some things are more important to a business than others. So things that are bigger, they're bigger for a reason. I'm expecting more detail. I'm expecting you to expand on the discussion in those boxes. Boxes that are smaller tend to be less populated. Why? Because you tend to find it difficult to find that information as an external person. You don't have insights into some of these businesses. You don't work for them. You don't have, unless you have, someone that who's an insider, it can be difficult to get the information. Some boxes are quite small. You might not be able to get access to that information. So that's purposely made that way. Okay, the business model Canvas is designed so that bigger boxes require more effort, they require more input, and the smaller boxes require less analysis. Okay. But basically, the Canvas or the BMC, it becomes a snapshot of your business. The different building blocks combined paint me a picture of what your business is going to look like. Now, I've got a couple of links here that are useful. I'm not going to play the videos. In fact, maybe I will. I think I'll play this one. This one's quite useful. This is an example, okay? So to do that, I'm going to stop the share just for 1 second. And I'm going to share again. And this time I'm going to share with sound so you can hear. Right, okay, so I'm going to play the video and hopefully you will all be able to see the video. Give me 2 little seconds. Right. Sorry, it's taking some time to load. I'm hoping you can all see the YouTube. Yep, so YouTube is just loading. Sorry, my system's quite slow. I've got BT are providing service updates in the area, so it's quite slow today. I do apologize for. Right, okay, here we go. Here's our what we're going to look.
Hello and welcome to Amazon. Today we're going to analyze patterns and the Canvas business model.
Sorry guys, the internet's being very disruptive. What I'll do is I'll paste the link in the chat. So I would suggest that you all, when you get a chance, watch. I would suggest when you get a chance, do watch the video. Example of how to use the business model using Amazon. I'm sure you've heard of Amazon. I'm sure you're all aware of who Amazon are. So I would suggest when you get a chance, either this evening or a later date and time, do watch the video. Okay, it's quite useful. So I'll share the link in the chat. Please do when you get a chance. Go ahead and watch the video. It just gives you an idea of how to put it all together. Okay. Right, I'm just going to share my screen again. So that's the link to the video. If you're looking to access the Canvas template, it's available via the Stratigizer website. So there's a link there, www.stratigizer.com/Canvas. Again, at the end, I will copy and paste that into the chat function. So if you're looking to do the BMC and you want access to a template, stratigizer.com have a PDF template that you can download and edit as required. Right, let's now move on to SWOT analysis. Now, we talked about SWOT earlier. It's basically the strengths, the weaknesses, opportunities, and the threats. So it's about understanding what's going on in the business. So the right sort of growth requires you to analyze your business's strengths and weaknesses, and also your place in the market from the position of threats and opportunities. You tend to find that the SWOT analysis can be done in a few different horizons. If you're looking at it from a micro perspective, then it very much is Horizon 1. So micro is very detailed, firm level. Horizon 1, short term. Or if you're looking at it from a macro perspective, then it will be more general, okay, more high level, and it can be anything from Horizons 1 to 3. So depending on your focus, if you're looking at very detailed area of the business, a particular function, a particular department, a particular area, then it tends to be quite focused on Horizon 1. What can we do in the short term? But if you're looking at macro, if you're looking at it perhaps industry-wide, you're looking at it on a bigger scale, then it can be anything in Horizons 1 to 3, as long as you're consistent, okay? What do I mean by that? Well, I would expect your assignment to be quite consistent. If you're focusing on the longer term future, then I'd expect it to have long-term outlook in your strengths, your weaknesses, your opportunities, and your threats. If you're looking at micro, I would expect to have Horizon 1, all about the short term. So don't be mixing it up. That's where students lose a lot of the marks. I want you to be consistent. If you're looking at micro, Horizon 1, short term. If you're looking at macro, it could be any of the horizons, but realistically, Horizons 2 and 3, it's all about longer term future. Okay. So SWOT analysis, as I've said already, it's about the strengths, the weaknesses, the opportunities, and the threats. So what are strengths? Well, strengths are areas of your business that give you an advantage. There are areas in which your business is performing well, is doing very well in those functional components. Weaknesses, now these are the aspects that are disadvantageous. What do I mean by that? These are the areas of your business that perhaps are disadvantaging you. You're not gaining anything, or you're actually losing out. There are things that perhaps your business isn't doing well enough. You're actually perhaps inefficient. You're using more resources than you should be. It's a weakness to your business. Opportunities, these are things that perhaps could be turned into advantage, but at the moment you aren't really doing that. So it's an opportunity for you to improve. It's things that can be made better. And finally, threats. Threats are those things that could potentially cause you problems. So they maybe aren't causing you problems today, but the things that are happening that might in the future cause you problems. So how do you eliminate them? How do you get rid of them? How do you come up with strategies to avoid running into problems? And this is basically what a SWOT analysis looks like. Okay, so in the top left-hand corner, we have the strengths. Top right-hand corner, we have weaknesses. Bottom left, we have opportunities. And bottom right, we have threats. You would list them in the matrix, and that's how you would present your SWOT analysis. But what I want you to do is, as I say already, is be clear. Are you looking at Horizon 1, Horizon 2, Horizon 3, or are you looking at all three horizons? My personal advice, be clear, choose one area and focus on it. If you try and do all three, it will get you confused. And often, based on my experience of marking student assignments, that's where you lose most of the marks. Students get confused to start talking about long-term strategy, but focus on the micro environment. That's not good. Micro is all about Horizon 1. It's all about immediate term future. So again, in order to avoid any confusion, in order to keep you straight, my advice would be choose a horizon and stick to it. For each of these categories, you should be asking questions. What kind of questions? Well, you should be looking at things such as, well, what are our core strengths? What do we do really well? What do our customers praise about our product offering? You know, how do we perhaps compare to our competition? These are all things that you might want to ask. For weaknesses, what do we not do well? What can we improve? Where do we get our most complaints? Where do we get most of our bad feedback? Opportunities, what do people say about us? What are areas for improvements? What are people suggested? So again, reviews can be a good way to identify opportunities. Customers will tell you what they want in the review. They'll tell you what doesn't work. They'll tell you what can be made better. These could be opportunities. And then finally, threats. What is going on? What's our competition doing? How is the market evolving? How can we keep up? So these are the threats that might affect your business. And then once you've done that, what do you do with it? Well, the whole purpose of it isn't just to make lists. You're not here to list me all the strengths and all the weaknesses and all the opportunities. It's about ordering them so that a weak strength is not misinterpreted as something which could counteract a strong threat. What do I mean by that? Well, basically, you should be going through a process of what's called matching and converting. So by matching, we mean you should be matching your strengths to the identified opportunities. So again, when you list them out, you should be identifying what strength you have and what does that mean for the opportunity? How can the opportunity improve that strength? It's about converting. So for conversion strategies, it's about what practical steps can you take to turn your weaknesses into strengths. Again, it's about coming up with solutions, okay? I want you to tell me, I don't want you to just list the weaknesses. I want you to tell me, well, what can be done to turn your weaknesses into strengths? What can be done in order to unlock the opportunities? What can be done to address or eliminate some of the threats facing your business? So that's part of your SWOT analysis. It's not just listing the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. It's also about coming up with a narrative, coming up with some dialogue that explains to me what it is you're looking to achieve through that strategy. Nonetheless, SWOT analysis does have some weaknesses. As I said already, sometimes students just complete lists. Now, coming up with a list, you get some marks because you've done some work, but if you want good marks, you want to pass the assignment with a strong grade, then you have to go beyond just creating lists. You have to do matching and converting. You have to give me a narrative. You have to explain why certain strategies would work, why you can eliminate some weaknesses, why you can come up with ways in which your opportunities can be maximized. So these are all things that I need you to be able to discuss in your SWOT analysis. There needs to be prioritization. So the core strengths, the core weaknesses, the core opportunities, the core threats, these should be the first few that appear in the lists. When I'm looking at your SWOT matrix, I would expect to see the important ones first and the least important ones towards the end. Finally, the importance of your SWOT will come down to the value of the strategy that it generates. There is no point in doing a SWOT analysis if you're not going to then use that information. You're not going to then analyze that information and turn it into a strategy that can deliver success for your business. Now, usually at this stage, I would ask you to choose a well-known organization, one that you're maybe familiar with, and apply a SWOT analysis framework. But I'm not going to do that today. I'm going to give that to you as maybe a bit of homework, something that you might want to take away and try in your own time, okay? So use a SWOT analysis and come up with, what are the strengths of a business, the weaknesses, the opportunities, the threats. My advice, use a well-known company, someone that you can research, Amazon, Google, Facebook. These are types of companies I would expect you to be analyzing. Don't be using a small, medium-sized enterprise or a local greengrocer, someone that only has one shop on one high street. That's not going to give you the detail or the information that you require. Use large, well-known corporations, Coca-Cola, Disney, for example, Nike, Adidas. These are types of companies I would expect you to be analyzing using the SWOT analysis. Now, there is also a next level to the SWOT analysis, and it's called SWOT Towers matrix. So basically, this is where you flip it on itself. So SWOT backwards is Towers, okay? So SWOT Towers matrix. What does that mean? Well, you match them, okay? So you match your threats and your weaknesses, and you come up with what we call many strategies. So these are minimizing strategies, okay? You want to minimize your threats, you want to minimize your weaknesses. So anything that comes up as a weakness and a threat, you want to minimize on both sides, okay? So it's what we call a many strategy. If you match up your strengths to your threats, then you end up with what's called a maxi-mini strategy. You want to maximize the strengths whilst minimizing the threats. So again, any strategies that you come up with here should be designed to maximize strengths and minimize threats. In this corner, we have weaknesses and opportunities. Here we have a mini-maxi strategy. So you want to minimize the weaknesses and you want to maximize the opportunities. So again, any strategies that are developed should be designed to minimize weakness and maximize opportunity in this box. And finally, in this box here, we have strengths and opportunities. In this context, you want to maximize both. You want to make the most of the strengths that you have, whilst also trying to benefit from as many opportunities as possible. So it's about maxi strategies. Okay, so this is the next step. Now, not very many students go as far as doing the Tow's matrix. It can be quite complicated to get your head around, but it certainly is a way to get extra marks. Okay, students that can do a SWOT and then turn it into a Tow's and give me good narrative, you're talking, you know, good grades, very top of the range grades for students that do this well. Then we have the PESTEL analysis. Now, the PESTEL analysis looks at the external. So SWOT, what we talked about already, was very much internally focused, looking at our internal strengths, our internal weaknesses, internal opportunities and threats. But for PESTEL, we're focusing on the bigger picture. We're focusing on what's happening outside of our organization and what we need to do to keep our business operating. So that's looking at things such as political variables. So that's the government, it's about regulation, it's about special interest groups, tax policies, fair trade decisions. These are all political variables that might impact our business. Economic variables, these are things such as labor costs, globalization, unemployment, inflation, perhaps, you know, what monetary or fiscal policy the government's pursuing. You know, these are all economic variables that will impact how our business performs. Social variables, these are things such as culture. It's about the population, the growth rate, age distribution, demographics. How does the media view the society? What ethical issues? How is diversity in the country? Ethnic and religious factors, how educated the population is, what the earning capacity is, what living standards are. These are all social variables that will impact our business. If, for example, we are providing a high-end luxury product and we're trying to provide it in a third world country, a country where perhaps people don't have a lot of money, you know, the likes of perhaps some of the South African, the African countries such as, you know, Ethiopia, Rwanda, these countries where unfortunately some people are not very well off and don't have even the basic necessities, then we're not really matching our product to our customer, are we? If we're providing luxury handbags and luxury high heels, then realistically there's not very many people in those countries that are going to be able to afford your product. Okay, so understanding the societal factors, societal variables, and how they change will impact on your business. Technological variables, these are things such as how mature is the technology that's being used. Again, in the developed countries in like the USA, UK, countries in Europe, etc., we have quite a strong infrastructure for technology. We have robotics, we have 5G, for example, network infrastructure, we have, you know, fiber optic broadband. We have the facilities to be cutting edge technology. But then you go to perhaps some of the more developing countries in the world, the likes of India, the likes of Brazil. They don't quite have the infrastructure in all the, at least not in all the country yet anyway. Perhaps some cities do, but not the whole country. And those countries aren't able to compete in the same way. So if your product or service relies on having constant access to the internet or having stable infrastructure of 5G, then realistically, you're going to want to focus on developed countries. Developing or underdeveloped countries will not have the framework, the logistics, the infrastructure in place to be able for you to reach your customer base. Technology access, licensing, patenting, these are all things that are important. Legal stuff, now this is us looking at legislation. So European legislation, EU, the UK has now come out, so Brexit's brought its own legislation for the UK. Environmental regulations, so again, environmental policies determined at a more general level by the United Nations. Industry-specific regulations, so again, certain industries are regulated in particular ways. These are all things that you need to be aware of in your business. How does the regulation and the legislation impact what you can and can't do? And then finally, environmental factors. These are stuff around sustainability, ecology, stuff around customer value, stuff around sustainability, stuff around energy conservation, reducing pollution, climate change. These are all things that are important. Again, I would suggest when you get a chance, apply the Pestel framework to a business that you know well. So again, use someone big, use an Amazon, use a Google, use Facebook, and try and understand how political dimension, economic dimension, social, technological, environmental, and legal might impact on those organizations. Again, it's good practice for your assignment. If you're looking to use SWOT or Pestel as part of your analysis tools, it might be good for you to practice on a well-known company to begin with, just so you know what you're doing with the models. We then have what we call Porter's 5 forces. Now we're getting very much into the direct strategy tools. So Michael Porter is one of the most well-known strategic writers or strategic academics. He talks quite expansively about strategy, and he's one of many scholars that are widely recognized for their role in developing strategy and developing what strategy is. For Porter's 5 forces, he identifies the structural features of industries that can determine the strength of competitive forces. So they find a position in industry where the company can best defend itself against a competitive force. Now, I'm going to go into detail on this in the next session, so I'm not going to go any further, but Porter's 5 forces is a good model. If you want to do some pre-reading, I would suggest looking at a few papers. So if you go on Google Scholar and type in Michael Porter competitive forces or 5 forces, there's some very good papers written by himself or written by other people about the 5 forces model. It's quite good because it's a complex model, so having some pre-reading might help you get your head around what we're talking about. But basically, that brings us to the end of today's session. So we introduced strategy, we introduced what strategic management's all about, why growth is important and how growth can be managed. We looked at the 3 horizons, horizons 1, 2, and 3, and I talked about why they're important to peg our discussion, to use it as a coat hanger and discuss certain things using the different horizons. We then moved into looking at SWOT and Pestel, and finally we just talked at a high level about Porter's 5 forces, which will be covered in a lot more detail in the next session. So as I said, that brings us to an end for today. Is there any questions anyone would like to ask? Any questions at all? I'll stop the recording as well for today.